יופי, מצוין, מצוין, יופי. אוקיי. אז אני אצלם לך את הזה, ותראי, זה מה שמעניין.
Hello. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, good morning. This is Piero.
Salut Pierrot.
But that's my wife.
Tu me vois Pierrot? You see me?
Je vois, non, mais attends que j'ouvre l'écran pour voir plus de...
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Jean-Marc. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm
You're
just okay. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry for that, but well, I can speak anyway.
We are sorry for you, for us, and we are a bit lucky, so now we have you.
And Pierrot. So you see me and you hear me? Yes.
I see you. I see.
Okay.
You just make my video a bit better. Do it a bit just for the light. Now I'm good. Now we are good. So it's great to see you and wonderful to have you here with us. It's a really huge pleasure, and I hope everybody will enjoy their first chakra ever tasting in Israel.
Yeah. You're tasting some chakra wine?
We are tasting the chakra wines. Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to put out my little bottles.
Okay.
And everyone around, I'm already ready with the glasses and with everything.
Wow.
Will join me in a second. I'm just pouring out the bottles. We are ready to go. Small bottles. I'll check 1 second. 1 second and I'm with you. I just need to see my colleague. Okay. I don't know if you have been you saw our tasting before, but we do have the little bottles.
Wow.
With the label.
Yes.
That was for the Mainke that we will start with. We have all the red ones
Yes.
as well. And
you're speaking about 20 vintage? Which
yes,
vintage?
2020 vintage for the Chacra, white and red.
Yes.
And we will have of course, all the 20s and the 19 for the 32.
Great.
Okay.
Good evening, Jean-Marc. Good evening, everyone.
Bonjour.
All the faces.
You know Asaf? You met Asaf already?
Yeah, I think we met in Elso.
Yes, I remember. Yes, at Le Soufflot.
Exactly. So
yes.
I think the best thing for us is you starting with telling a little bit about connection as one of the most famous winemakers for the white wines in Burgundy, and coming to Argentina, joining Piero, and
but maybe it's better if Piero explain a little bit the story about Chacra.
All right.
Yeah, and then the addition with the white was not before 2017, but it's a long story, and maybe Piero, if you agree, you can explain it.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of a historical landscape. Briefly, I decided to branch out from my family and big passion for Pinot, and I somewhat landed in Argentina in 2001. When I got there, I thought it was a huge mistake because from the plane, I was staring down on the desert. And, you know, when you think about Pinot, or in this case, Chardonnay, a desert is not the first location that comes in mind from a traditional farming point of view. But once I got there, I was schooled by nature in the sense that everything that I felt was true and right in Europe somewhat was not true and right in Argentina. In other words, there was an understanding and a discovery that the vine is such a noble plant that even when it's planted in places that are not so conventional for us Europeans, it still has an incredible chance to adapt, thrive, and then express itself in an interesting way that is actually varietal expression and not something completely different. I had a glimpse of this possibility because when my grandfather planted the first Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard in Bolgheri with the idea to do Sassicaia, there was in Tuscany, there was only Sangiovese primarily. So I had seen a similar picture before, and Argentina somewhat, it's part of that experience. We started immediately by making organic and biodynamic wines from single vineyard wines that are Massal selection and ungrafted. And over one of my many trips to Burgundy with some American sommelier, we were invited at Marquis d'Angeville's house, who is in Volnay. And over a lamb dinner, which I was a bit nervous because my wife hates lambs and she doesn't have fun in all these wine tours. But the lamb was extremely good. So it was a big relief for me. And I was sitting next to Pauline, who is Guillaume d'Angeville's wife. And in front of me, there was Jean-Marc. And over the course of the dinner, Pauline was asking questions about the trip. She heard we went to Champagne and to Chablis, and she was very curious. And so I told her a little bit of an anecdote that while we were in Chablis, a young couple had asked me if there was the possibility for them to come to Patagonia in February, where in Chablis is very rainy and cold and humid, and come down to the summer of the Southern Hemisphere to make some Chardonnay for us. And I thought that the offer was very tempting and endearing at the same time. And it was flattering to be considered as a partner in this. And so at that point, you know, Jean-Marc says, what do you mean? You're going to make some Chardonnay with some people from Chablis? Why don't you ask me? And for me, you know, first of all, Jean-Marc is a friend. So it's always, you know, it's always intimidating, or you want to try to be considerate toward your friends. And this would have been a big ask for me to ask Jean-Marc. But then I felt it was the same thing if I'm calling the Pope, who's Argentine, in Rome, and I ask him if he wants to give a little mass in the village of Marche, you know. So sure enough, I was flattered and very touched of this trust that was obviously in Jean-Marc's question and request. And of course, on a personal level, all my insecurities start going off in my head, because I didn't think that we were up to par for the job, and I wasn't sure if we were going to be good enough. And so I despite the fact that with Jean-Marc and some of our friends, we go on vacations together, I think for the first couple of years, I avoided the conversation in a very obvious way, until I met a geologist called Pedro Parra in Frankfurt at a wine event, who basically proceeded to insult me in a corridor by telling me that the whole world wants to make wine with Jean-Marc Rouleau, and I'm the only idiot that doesn't bother to expand the conversation. And so, I kid you not, he sent me back to my room, and like a little schoolboy who felt punished, I went upstairs and we started the conversation with Jean-Marc. And here we are. 2017 was the first vintage of Chardonnay. Just a little bit of a detail. When I got to Patagonia, my learning curve was at least 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Because the elements are completely different. And so you're used to doing certain things that you try, but they don't really work there. For Jean-Marc, I feel the experience was a little bit different, because he came into a new microclimate with his Burgundian experience and know-how. And without skipping a beat, he took over the space as if always lived there, with a lot of humbleness and graciousness, but with a very strong determination and a very clear sense of direction, with no compromises. And so I'm going to let him speak now, because I don't want to speak for him. But in my view, it's very rare to witness something of this dimension. I am so incredibly proud of this friendship. And I'm also learning a lot from Jean-Marc, devotion, but also professionalism. You know, he's, I don't want to divulge this information, but he's the oldest man in the cellar when it comes to Patagonia. But he acts, moves, and works like he's the youngest member of the team.
I like that, you know, there's no problem. I like that.
For all the young Argentine men who sometimes are a little bit lazy, it's the best school. And so here we go. I let Jean-Marc speak.
Okay. I just want to explain, we first of all, it's a friendship story, because we met, Piero and I, a long time ago, as we were working with the same importer in the US, Grand Cru Selection. So we met several times. And of course, when he asked me to come to Chacra with this project, I went there in summer 2016. Of course, I trust the place. I trust the farming. I trust the way they are working. But first of all, I trust Piero. So this is the main thing to understand why I decided to do it. Because, you know, I was solicited many times, not many times, but several times, to produce wine in another place than Meursault. And I could go to Mâcon, to Chablis, or many other places. And I think this was really different. And what intrigues me was the fact I had to go there just with what I know. That's all. There is no the history of Burgundy. There is no infrastructure. I don't know how to translate. There is no wine shop. There is no. You just go there just with what you know, what you practice in your wine country, and it was a real challenge. It was quite different, and maybe we'll speak about that later. But we are not working right now terroir process, but we're making vin d'assemblage. because we are new, and I think we are not able to revendicate any terroir right now. We're going soon to isolate a plot, but we have to experiment the place before speaking of terroir. It's a long story, and of course we'll never end this. And so the first vintage was 2017, and so I explained about friendship, the relationship with Pierrot, which is the main things. And then the second thing is the feeling I had when I traveled there, because the nature is so strong, is so deep and intense. The light, the temperatures, the amplitude of temperature between night and day, and you feel something very strong coming from the nature. There are a lot of animals, a lot of birds. When you sleep there, you hear many noise. It's really strange to sleep in Chacra. And so I did this for 5 years, and I can say it changed my point of view with Meursault. And this is very important to me. Of course, I'm not going to reproduce Chacra in Meursault, because it's not possible, because the landscape have been working since several centuries, and we damage many things. But we're going to try to explore different way of farming, of replanting trees, respecting it's not only being in biology. It's not just saying I am in biology, it's just a small thing, but it's all the small addition you do around this which make the difference. And going to Chacra, I'm looking at Meursault on a different way. So it was a really deep and rich experience for me. It was not.
So we have two things. First of all, we can, I think, pour the first wine, with the Mainke we will start, and after that we have one question here for you, probably, Pierrot. Why the name is Chacra?
Chacra means a small farm of square dimensions, and it's a word that is almost specific to this region. The equivalent in the north of this word would be finca, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard. Yeah, when the British and the Italian arrived in Argentina, the government decided to donate a lot of land to whomever wanted it. And so they created a subdivision of the land that you could cultivate in the valley. They created with an Italian engineer a very sophisticated system of canals to divert the water in order to be able to allow all the farmers to irrigate by gravity with this very clean water that comes from the Andes. So Chacra is before the subdivision was 100 squares of 100 hectares. Now they're down to 25 because there've been subdivisions over the year. Chacra means a farm in the local world. And I wanted to use a farming word, a word that belongs to the place, and a word that belonged to the local community, because it's a wine from the place. I did not want to inject my family, myself, heritage in this. I wanted the wine to be from there with a name from there. So that's why Chacra.
Yes. Well, the explanation is everyone understood now.
Understood.
So that is wonderful. We can open your chakras, we said in Hebrew. But so we can start, and tell us a little bit, maybe, Jean-Marc, about the Mainke, and after we will taste the Chacra. So we will start with the Mainke, maybe about a little bit the vinification, the
difference between that and the Chacra.
We had many Burgundy winemakers here before, and it's very nice, Pierrot, to tell us about Guillaume d'Angerville. He was just with us last week.
Okay.
It was another great tasting with him, and having you now, both of you, is such a great honor, and it's really, really nice. And mentioning Pedro Parra, I also been speaking with him about his wines from Chile, and really exploring more all this part of the world for the Israeli market.
Yeah. So when I began in 2017, I just I tried, what I'm doing in Meursault. Of course, you have to know the farming is completely organic and biodynamic, and it's very well done. It's the space between the row is how much, Piero? 1.20 m?
Yes.
150? Okay. So it's allow many things that we cannot do here with 1 meter between each row. So it's really very nice farming, and they graft Chardonnay on old rootstock of Merlot. Voilà. So at the beginning, we had to buy some grapes outside of the estate, but now we are about 90% we are self-sufficient so all the grapes come from the estate, and it's probably also the explanation of I think the quality increased since 2 or 3 years. And so it's hand picking, and I crush the grapes, which is not usual for the white, but I'm doing it in Meursault, and I wanted to do it in Chacra. It was a little bit risky, and I was very careful with the pH, because the acidity are lower than here, and pH, as long as you press, goes up very quickly. So I stopped the press much earlier than in Meursault, and then we managed a press wine. But finally, we like it because during this process, the end of the press, it brings a backbone to the wine, and with a tiny quantity, it may help to the tasting. So I don't want to be too technical, but usually in Burgundy, we stop the press at 1.6 bar, and in Chacra, we stop at 0.8. Well, we separate the juice. So then we make a decanting in a stainless steel vat, débourbage, and then put the wine back in barrel. So we use barrel, we use a little bit of stainless steel, we use concrete X, and we use grès. I don't know how to translate grès.
Wine? No, the
No,
one that we saw at Michelot. It's like a big ceramic kind of round shape, egg-shaped ceramic.
So we have several 1,000 liters, and the élevage is a mix of all those containers. But I think we can't avoid the barrel because complexity comes from the barrel.
Yeah.
And the barrel set is about the same as here in Meursault, maybe a little bit lower. It's no more than 10% of new oak, and that means there are barrel 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, plus those containers I was speaking about. Then we make the fermenting process and wait for the malo. And the wine, the cycle is a little bit shorter than in Meursault, as we bottle after 11 months. So that means we racked in November, December, and the bottling takes place in January. Ready for the next harvest, as we usually harvest mid or early February. That's the wine process, which looks like very much the one I'm practicing in Meursault. So the main thing is the press cycle. I'm stopping it earlier. And the second thing is the match between different containers. And third thing is a shorter élevage. Voilà.
And when we taste now the difference between Mainke and Chacra.
So as I explained, ce sont des vins d'assemblage. So it's not as when you come to Domaine Rouleau, you're tasting each one wine for each terroir, Méchavaux, Luchet, Vireuil, etc. So we made a blind tasting to find the most expressive wines, the most elegant. So it's very difficult. It's a new exercise for me, and I'm enjoying doing it. It's really very difficult. So we create the main cuvée, which is Chacra. And I was explaining about terroir. When we make it blind, there is a plot. His name is C4 West. And we like very much this plot, and usually it's always come in the Chacra cuvée. So maybe in the future, we'll decide to vinify C4 West by itself. So that would be a third cuvée. It's still in our mind. Maybe, with the crisis, with COVID crisis, was not the time to change big things. But maybe in the future, we'll have 3 white instead of 2. And then we build the second cuvée, Mainke. And Mainke, excusez-moi. Menke is the name of the village close to the winery. So you imagine Meursault, you buy a land far from the coast, and you call it Meursault. Wow, it's a dream. No, it's a dream. So I'm joking, but it's a dream because we are free. We are free to experiment, to look for, to try many things. So I really enjoy it, and it's a different process. So many things looks like Meursault, but it's not exactly the same habits and ways than Meursault.
We had a few days ago, I gave it blind. I said I come to a tasting with a staff, with a kuti, with one sommelier in Israel, in a restaurant that have many of your wines from Meursault. And I said, okay, what I will bring blind today? I said,
yeah,
the mind case very open, it will show nice. I brought it blind, and the end guess was Pouligny Montrachet, Benoît Hont.
okay. Benoît Hont en plus.
And they went very direct on it. Yeah, Village Première, maybe Chassagne, maybe that. You know, I let them go and on. And it's not about, to let them be wrong, but it's to prove the quality being in when you see the label.
I think
it's totally different.
Of course, I taste the wine towards mine in the same time, and I did it several times, and I think it was very interesting. I think the structure of the wine, the length, the precision, elegance, it's you can compare it with a Meursault or Pouligny maybe. The only thing which changed a little bit is the aroma, which is a little bit more varietal, and of course it comes from the vegetal. And of course, my dream would be to bring some buds from Burgundy, but it's a long story. But anyway, I like the wine. Yes, yeah. I like the wine.
It has a very nice softness on the palate. It's very long, and it's you're just making two wines, and you said you're taking the best mask to put in the Chacra, but the complexity and energy and really length you get from the Mainke is.
Yeah.
If this is the second wine in the whites.
No, it's really delivering. What is nice, I say to the restaurants and everyone, for the client, the Mainke is really delivering, and it's really nice to taste it and to understand. When the Chacra is more close, more reserved.
Yes.
And
this is the case for 2020, especially.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we can taste, move on and taste the Chacra Chardonnay. I think everyone have it finished in the glass, and it's very special also for everyone at home, because usually I'm not sure there have been tasting of Argentinian wines lately. We actually tasted one Argentinian wine today, but we'll say after, and such a special thing to have something so different. Everybody knows Mendoza, everybody knows this area, everybody knows Malbec, Franc, and all this part. And suddenly to have those from such a different place, it's amazing. And for us, Piero, it's our top wanted winery in the catalog that we want to visit.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
There's an airport just near, 40 minutes. So we're...
Daniel, I want to add, when you say Pinot Noir, South America, you imagine something which is exactly the opposite of what Piero is doing. Absolutely. And I think in the white process, it's about the same. If you think Chardonnay from South America, you have something in your mind. No, and we turn we're not at all in this direction. And so he gives the impulse with the reds, and I think there is a harmony between the way we're producing white and reds.
I know, I remember when I visited you, it was maybe, I think already 3 years ago, and you know, I just spoke with him because I said, I heard a lot of good things about Chacra and everything. And he told me, you never tasted. And he said, I said, no, I never tasted, but I just heard such a good things. And he told me, I don't have a bottle. I don't find a bottle, and I will give you a bottle. So it ended with more than maybe like a few pallets than a bottle.
Yeah.
So it's a nice story to end up with that. Starting at the winery maybe 3-4 years ago, I think. And when I was in Russia, in Sochi, I was telling I wanted the last bottle. They had the Trentaidos 2014 in the restaurant when I made to the ski, and there was no bottle. And then I could taste Piero the 14 in Cannes, and it was absolutely great in the restaurant, Italian restaurant in Cannes. So I can also say how beautiful these wine are aging, and they are really the top of the wine world for both colors, and it's really nice. And as Jean-Marc told me when we met in Merceau 2 weeks ago, I took it because I love the red wine. I love them. They are really, really great. And when we tasted the first one, it was amazing to have all the range, and it's such a nice surprise for us. And thank you very much also for giving us the option to work and represent you on this such a special project, really. So.
Merci à toi, Ami. Merci à toi, Daniel.
You let us a little bit about 2020, maybe, about the vintage a little bit in Patagonia.
I remember when I was doing 2020, I have in my mind 2018 in Burgundy, which is a very generous year. And really, the main thing is healthy grapes. And the grapes were really beautiful in 2020. And it was a quite good balance. Not to, we began in 2017 with a hot vintage, and so 2020 was at a point I really enjoyed to vinify, and I remember especially the grapes were healthy. We almost sold nothing. The same in 2018, and for me it's a key point to anticipate which wine are able to age or not. We're speaking sometimes about heat, sun, acidity, etc. But I think the main things to imagine the way the wine will age is the quality of the grapes. And really 2020 was great. Voilà. So for example, in Burgundy, 2018 is not considered as a tip-top vintage because the production was really high. But anyway, I'm sure in 10, 15 years, with the evolution in the bottle, it will produce really great things. I know the experience with Chacra, the same as I have in Merceau, but I think this is quite able to age.
I'm a huge fan. I think that everyone are, running on the 17s, and I say, let the future talk and see what will be in the end concerning the 17 and the 18s. Me, I love the backbone with the acidity having the 18 Burgundy, and it's a special. And here you can really feel as well in the Chacra, the Mainke is really showing. Yeah. And the Chacra is so intense and complex, and your palate is really filled with this kind of mix between the minerality, the kind of tropical fruit, nice one that you have inside, yellow
dry
one.
Extract on the finish, and really the saliva comes back with a lot of minerality, a touch of saltiness, of course, and it's truly a beautiful wine and a very, very complex one. And I think we're tasting it today, and it will, as you said, it will age gracefully, really gracefully.
And we can tell you that we've been bottling it on this 50 ml ones on Sunday. It was Sunday, and Asaf flew with them to France.
Okay. Oui, you did it in France.
Yeah, we're now we are making the tasting from Paris, from our hotel in Paris, because the world situation in Europe, that the borders start to close a little bit. We are supposed to go next week. and we just take 1 week back because we saw a little bit what's going on. Anyway, a little bit of quarantine on the way back, but we just been in Champagne, and that's why I said we tasted another Argentinian one today to Salon de la Motte with Didier Dupont.
Oui.
The Tiano and Areno. So I say it's unbelievable. The wine, the stage of the wine is amazing. Amazing. You have really, they just opened up a little bit and
Yes.
they're in a perfect place. So that's also a nice note for knowing the future for the aging of the wine. Well, so thank you very much, Jean-Marc, for this the wide explanation. You're coming to Chacra and everything, and I think we can have the story, all the animals. I don't know, Piero, how you fought with all these animals to win the grapes in Chacra, because I saw even the turtle coming this week to the vineyard, and. Yeah. Making your own story, working with also a little bit of Malbec that we will also
no, we will not
don't taste today.
We could focus on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
And tell us a little bit about, because here until we get to the 32 and 55, we have the Barda and the Zin Azufre, which each one it's a big story by itself already.
Yes, but to touch briefly on the animals, like Jean-Marc, Jean-Marc is, as you know, is from Meursault and I'm from Tuscany. And I think that Argentina for us further highlights what humans did in Europe in the 40s and 50s and 60s, maybe without a lot of consciousness. But once you arrive in Argentina, you're privy to a radically different biodiversity in terms of flora and fauna. The astonishing part for me was that we actually planted vineyard when I got there on soil that had never been farmed in the history of the planet. I'm not used to this as a Tuscan person because we've been farming this thousands of years. And as a consequence of that, we have a radically different profile of biodiversity, which was further modified with the use of heavy chemistry and chemicals. Once chemicals were introduced in the European agricultural, let's say that everything took a beating. Well, over there, you don't have most of that. And being in a desert that was created by the shrinking of a river, so picture a high plateau with sequoia groves and a very large population of dinosaurs, with a river that crosses this plateau that is approximately up to 36 kilometers of width. So it's a gigantic river that moves all the melting, the water that is caused by the melting of the snow of the Andes. So it's a river that brings not just a tremendous amount of water, but the water is very clean and is very mineral, because it has to go down all the Andes in order to reach to us. So it's a very clean mineral water. Over the course of 5 million years, the river shrunk to a few hundred yards, and this created a sunken valley in the middle of what is now a desert. And so it's almost, exactly, you have a little bit of a picture. It's almost like, the perfect microclimatic conditions, because deserts, I don't need to tell you guys, in Israel, you're magicians in what you do with agricultural there. And with a little bit of water, a desert can be the Garden of Eden, because you have low humidity. This means no pest, no disease, no bacteria, no Phyllospora, no Tignola, no Oidium. And we have almost like a constant breeze or wind. So that further dries the plant after the rain and removes the morning humidity as well. And we have cold nights, which have a tendency to enhance the aromatics of our wine as we're getting closer to harvest. And we have a light wind that further removes all the pest, bacteria, and disease that can be coming in the vineyards. All of this with a very strong luminosity that almost every time guarantees a perfect ripeness of the grapes. So it's almost like it touches all the items on any winemaker's wish list, I think. And in addition to that, there is a very large amount of very old vines that were planted at the turn of the century, in this case, primarily Malbec, but also Pinot and some Chardonnay and so on and so forth. And so we have access to very old genetic material that nowadays is very difficult to find, and that hasn't been grafted or genetically modified by humans. I mean, of course, there's been a mutation, but the mutation is in the vineyard. So these conditions altogether make, I think, and maybe Jean-Marc has been privy to this too, the most idyllic conditions. Of course, it's an extreme place, and therefore you need to be very quick. You need to be very well capitalized, because we have very strong spring frosts, like I'm sure you've seen around deserts, that can kill all your flowers. So we invested heavily on 2 to 3 different systems against the frost. And then we have the occasional hail. I saw my neighbors losing everything. I saw him cry, a 65-year-old man. This was in 2015. So we invested heavily in the nets for the vineyards. And all of this allow us to mitigate risk and get to this situation. As far as the animals, you know, the lack of chemicals have allowed the animal that already were residing there to stay alive. So we have gigantic scorpions. First time I got there in my living room, I found a spider this big. And,
what a welcome.
And that's when I realized I had almost maybe arachnophobia, because I almost wanted to cry. I kid you not. It's like the fear was gigantic. But we also have a lot of snakes. We have eagles. We have all sorts of rapacious animals. The river is one of the biggest estuaries in South America. As you said, we have turtles, but we also have armadillos. They're eating the ants. You know, deserts, there's a lot of ants, and so they keep the ants at bay, and we don't have to use chemicals. We've placed around 160 beehives on the estate, because we found that through their stomach, they regenerate yeast every year. And so since we have the beehives sprinkled throughout the property, we have approximately 170 of them right now. We are able to have fermentation that go very smoothly. Vats don't get stuck. And so it helps us tremendously. We feel we have a very strong, but a very good quality of yeast. And, you know, a byproduct of that is the wax that we use to put on top of our bottles more and more and more. So there's a contribution that goes from yeast to replacement of the capsules. And so these animals are there. We coexist with them. We try not to bother them. And in terms of birds and birds eating the crop, you know, if you go to Tuscany or maybe some other areas, there's very little birds because they kill them all. In Patagonia, there is a gigantic bird population. And so what we do, we plant other things around the farm that they like to eat. And so we divert their attention almost by opening a restaurant right next to the vineyards. You know, it's a little bit like the concept. So this is how we go about to manage the system there. We try to do it in the most natural way possible.
So we can start, I think, with the first red. Then you can tell us a little bit.
Daniel?
Yes?
Just a question. I told you, you know, I'm not feeling very well tonight. So I think if you don't mind, I have to take care of myself. And I want to thank everybody for your attention. And we're so excited you enjoy the wine. Thank you so much. But, you know,
thank
it's a
you,
little bit difficult. Okay. Merci.
Feel well. We hope to hear good news from you soon.
Okay. Merci.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Excusez-moi. Hein. À bientôt.
À bientôt. Yes, Pierre. So, Piero, we will start with the Barda. We will taste the Barda, the Sinazufre, and then we'll move to the High Cuvée. And you can tell us a little bit about the vinification and actually Pinot Noir was there from start when you arrived. It was already the place of Pinot Noir in Argentina.
So in 1967, there were over 2,000 hectares of Pinot Noir planted in Rio Negro. Apparently, a large champagne house had decided to make Méthode Champenoise wine outside of Burgundy. And they found through a very diligent study that Rio Negro was the most suited region for that. They came and they planted a lot, and then other farmers started to plant some as well, until Mendoza gave them tax breaks and free land, and so they relocated their operation over there. So we've had Pinot Noir for over 110 years in the valley. That's when it first got there. I was drawn to Argentina because we purchased vineyards that were planted in 1932, in 1945, in 1955, in 1968. So a large portion of our vineyard holding are planted by other people, and we purchased them already planted. Most of them were almost abandoned in the sense that farmers locally, they don't have a lot of money and they're unable to make wine. They're not very strong in distribution. And so little by little, they're ripping out all these older vineyards and they replace them by pears because it's more of a commodity, pears and apples. So yes, all of our vineyards were planted by other people, not all of them, like 80% of them. And Barda is a wine that comes from vineyards that are on average 20 years old today. It's I've done a selection of our grapes. How do we do that? Typically at harvest time, where all the plants still have their grapes, we went 20 years ago and we start tasting every single plant, and we started to mark them. And we divided in 4 families. The families that we like the most, we take that genetic material and we reproduce that. So we are trying to preserve the identity of what we have by using the same genetic material. And we have our own nurseries. We don't buy plants. So the idea is that you have your baby there and your baby grows up there. You don't send your baby to Spain or to Mendoza or to Germany and then they send back to you. Because that can have contamination, that can have many different aspects. Mm-hmm. So we have our own nursery, we produce our own plants, and we replant the same material that we extract from the vineyards. And we've done a selection because we think that some of them inevitably is better than others for the purpose that we want. So Barda, the first vintage was 2004. And it was not a real Barda. It was the leftovers of 32, the one that didn't make the blend. Today, Barda is a wine that grapes are picked very early in the morning. We bring them in the cellar. We place them in a cement vats. We keep them at 20 degrees, more or less. Fermentation starts on indigenous yeast. So it's a spontaneous fermentation. It takes place after 3 to 5 days. Because we don't use sulfur at winemaking or any other chemicals of any kind, we need to be very precise, super clean, and we need to keep the temperature of the cellar low, because the fact that there is a crazy biodiversity, biodiversity to be in balance is yin and yang, so minus and plus. And when you're operating without sulfur, you're completely naked. And so you gotta take all the precautions to make sure that the minuses are not taking over.
Yeah.
And that's very, very difficult, especially in a place where it's so fertile in terms of biodiversity. And so you have a lot of contradicting yeast families, and some of them, if they take over, you can have volatility, you can have all sorts of things. And then we don't extract. So the idea is that I designed vats totally on intuition, and I got very lucky because I had no proof that my idea was right. But I designed vats that are super, super wide and very shallow, because my idea was not to touch the grapes during fermentation or to touch them least possible. So once these vats are filled up, they're typically between 4,000 to 6,000 liters. At certain moments when it starts to ferment, the ratio, it's almost equal. So your hat, what we call the skins, are almost a little bit submerged. And so the wine is made more by infusion and by extraction. So in other words, you're letting it bleed. It's like making tea, you know, as opposed to like making coffee in a way. You know, coffee, you have to press the water through coffee at a specific pressure and extract all you can in 7 seconds. No, that's for an espresso. While tea is a little bit different. And so the idea for me, without, these are all intuitions, but without any scientific proof, was that maybe if we let the wine makes itself and we don't intervene as much, maybe we get more of a authentic expression of what's going on in the vineyards. And cement, simply because when I got there, the electricity was very sketchy. We had to bring water, we had to bring electricity, we had very limited resources at our disposal. And so a cement vat with very broad, wide walls I felt that it ensured for the microclimate inside the vat to evolve at its own pace, as opposed to stainless steel that is very thin. You need to cool it down if your cellar is hot, and so on and so forth. So the idea was place the grapes in an environment where they can behave the way they want to behave and conduct a fermentation. And then once we're done, we age a portion of it, which is at least 50% in cement. So the lots that when we do the decoupage, so we separate the skin from the juice, we try every single lot, and the one that are the most delicate, the less tannic, and the most floral, we'll age them in cement, because we believe that cement preserves those characteristics. It preserves that crunchiness, that fruitiness, that delicacy. The one that are a little bit more dense or structured, or maybe a touch more tannic, that goes in oak, because oak has a tendency to soften, and also it gives a contribution that we like it very much. There is no new oak on the red wines. And so typically it's all used oak of 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. As long as the barrels are good, we keep them. And then now we've also added some portion of grass. Grass, you know, is like a clay container that is shaped almost like an amphora. And it gives an aspect to the wine is they're very linear. So Jean-Marc and I, we like the same wines. We like when there is this tension, when the wines are linear or mineral and a little bit of umami or salinity, however we want to discuss it. And so maybe our style of winemaking, if you think about it, it's closer to white wine than red wine. I don't like a lot of extraction. I don't like the wines to be very heavy. I prefer tension. I prefer minerality, and I prefer more of a floral aspect than to a dense extracted alcoholic wines. And so that's how it is. And then we taste all of the sample of all of the élevage, and then we'll do our final blends, which very simple.
It's really, I cannot say from one thing I want to say about this wine that is juicy, but then it's really more infused than juicy.
Because the texture is very light, and yet you still feel floral character, red fruit character, and it's very tasty. That's why we want to say juicy, because we like juicy. But it's just.
You know, I agree with your description in the sense that I think, especially us in the wine world, we started using big words to describe simple concept. And sometimes they say, "How would you qualify your wine?" I said, "Happy." And most people are surprised, but you know, something that you like should invoke happiness and well-being. And then if you want to be an intellectual and are using very complex word that not everybody understands, you know, tasting is an individual experience for everyone. You taste with a woman and she'll find many more things in the wine than you do because they have a better palate. So for me, talking with emotions sometimes can be a little bit more precise. And yes, I hope that we have finesse, and by finesse, what I'm trying to say, or maybe intellectuality, but not in the same intellectuality in terms of intelligence, intellectuality in the sense that first you need to taste with your intellect, your brain, and be present, because when wines are like this, people have a tendency to drink them and then the bottle is finished and you don't even necessarily remember the wine. It's fine, you had a great moment, which is what the wine is all about. But if you really pay attention and you close that gap between your palate and your brain, you can start to discern things. And this is what typically great Pinot is. You know, it's People that drink Cabernet, they say, oh, it's a light wine with no color. Well, but if you pay attention, it's not light at all.
Yeah.
It lasts.
It's a wine. It's really a wine of contents, like you said. We don't want to put the big titles on it. It's really wines with not for the title, it's for the contents. You know, it's when you open the newspaper and you leave out the titles and you read all the contents, then you can have much more from those who you pass this one because the title was not so sexy or whatever, or from the other side you will have strange context with a very juicy all-round wine. But
and also, you know, the fact that our soil, they have so much salinity, it helps what you just described, because salinity makes your palate salivate. And so if your wine, this is what I learned, my thought about the wine. When your wine are made this way and there is a touch of salinity, but there's also very transparent and mineral, this salinity makes your palate salivate and you want to have another sip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, a wine is not an element of meditation. We make wine because it's an element of your meal. It's a component of your meal. In a way, you know, there's this very famous American MS called Richard Betts that says wine is groceries. It's great because Americans sometimes can describe things much better than Europeans, even though culturally this is our story. But it's true, you know, wine is groceries. And I understand that for some people today, wine is an element of status. But for me, it's an agricultural product that has to convey a lot of pleasure and has to be in balance with the food that you eat, so it will better your eating experience. And so we're making wine that have a tendency to, of course, Barda maybe is the wine that you can drink alone the fastest. Once you go up in labels, there is more, you know, complexity, and so it's a little bit different, but yeah.
So do you prefer to taste the Sina Soufre and then both the higher ones, or the opposite?
It depends who I'm tasting with. I've noticed that today there is a lot of antagonistic conversation in our business, and I'm trying to stay away. You know, I don't want to argue with anyone. I just want to make wine and make people happy. So
that's what it's all about today.
We don't put here today. There is no our company. We ran out of titles. We don't run on the natural title or something.
Right, and that's a good thing, because you should decide based on a tasting experience, not on a political experience. I mean, idea or something.
Yeah.
If I may, you know, for me, I've been drinking these kind of wines for a long time. For the last 20 years, I've been going to Burgundy with a lot of friends of mine that are sommelier in New York. I was the official translator and driver, and they were there to buy a large amount of wine. So I discovered Auvergnat, Salos. I discovered a lot of these people 15, 20 years ago, and I was drawn to that world. I was drawn to those flavors. I was drawn to all those things that felt more authentic to me, less manipulated. And the more I dug, and the more it was interesting to me. And I was stuck because I was very insecure and I didn't know what to do. I think I had a lot of fears. And in 2013, I had a huge accident. I had 18 fractures.
So I stop you for 1 second, Piero. From your saying, continue to say that, but we can pull the Sina Soufre because you are going to tell the story about and taste the wine that we are talking about. So that will be the wine. And
so I have this crazy accident. I got turned down by 3 hospitals. They fly me to the capital in Buenos Aires, and basically I'm all broken, and I'm 6 months in a wheelchair. And so that was the moment for me to try to face my shame, my insecurities, my feeling of inadequateness, you know, all those demons that we all have, you know, trauma that we all carry. I mean, I don't need to tell you guys this. You're living in an environment that is far more hostile than mine. So I feel maybe my level of is much smaller.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. You know, when you pass something, you pass. For us, many times it's just because we are in this part, we are less, working on it, and we are less confronting it
Yeah.
because it's coming. You have a reason why not to, So
Yeah, I was
we can learn
confronted.
from you what to do. Huh?
I left my home. I was 12 years old and I never came back. So I'm sort of like a completely self-made man. And I'm used to doing everything by myself. So when you're in a wheelchair and you cannot move half of your body, you need help for everything, to cut your food, to drink your water, to go to the bathroom, to get out of bed. And so that gave me time. And I was on drugs sometimes, they give you these pills to try to attenuate the pain. And I used to go in a wheelchair. They used to wheel me from my house to the winery, and I used to go through the vineyards. And in my state of I don't know how to call it, I was starting to look at the vineyards, and I look at them as a matrix. So everything I was looking, not at, while I was looking at the vineyard, I was observing something else. I was observing the energy of the vineyards. I was observing the movement of the butterflies and the bees. I was observing the hair in the vineyards. I was observing all the fauna that surrounds us. Like Jean-Marc says, it's crazy over there. And I thought, what am I doing? We're not using any chemicals. And then the grapes come in the cellar healthy, ready for the fights, ready for the Olympics, non-contaminated. And you know what we do? Before we put them in the vat, we just add a little bit of sulfur just in case. And so I started thinking, if it rains, do you take an antibiotic just in case before you leave the house? And so I started to try to see the parallel between me, my life, or the life of humans, and the vineyards, and see what are the inauthenticities. Where is it that we stop being authentic in our intent and we start giving in to a world of chemistry that was never present in the history of humankind before, because it's very recent, all these chemicals that we put in the vineyards. And so I started to feel bad about myself. And I went into a personal journey, and I decided to fire half of my team. And I decided to change things around completely. And so, of course, because I'm a little bit paranoid and I wasn't sure of the outcome, I tried on a small batch. And I went very early in the morning. This was when my team was not fired yet. And so I took my friend, two friends, we harvest hiding ourselves at 6 o'clock in the morning. We picked the 2 rows of the Vineyard 32, and then we hid ourselves in a small room of the winery where we grabbed some old barrels, we removed the top, we cleaned them, we did a strong selection on a table, and we start making wine without science and without chemistry. As a winemaker, the first thing you do in the morning when you show up at the cellar, you try all the vats, and as you're trying the juice of all the vats, you have the analysis of the vat in your hand that your lab just finished for you in time, so while you're tasting, you can see what's inside. So obviously you don't trust your palates fully. And science that I'm thinking, we're relying on science, which is still in a very infant stage, because science seems to be in constant evolution. And often it contradicts itself every 5 or 6 years. There is new findings, there is new discoveries, there is discoveries that contradict the previous ones. So I thought, why don't we make wine and empirical evidences like the humans have been doing all these centuries? And we try to not use science or chemistry or chemicals, and let's see what that tastes like. And so that's what we did. It was a scandal in the winery, many arguments, many fears. And this wine, in the barrel, I wrote Sina Soufre. All over the barrel, there were 3 barrels of wine because I didn't want anyone to touch it.
Yeah.
But people are so conditioned, so my consultant enologist was in Italy. While I'm there, he calls it, he says, I looked at the analysis of the wine that he had made behind my back. And so he gives instruction to someone to go and add some sulfur. And I find this girl, I'm like, what are you doing? He says, Gabriele told me that the acidity is low. And so we should add a little bit of sulfur and then we should acidify this wine. And so I'm like, the acidity is low, but the wine is super fresh. So everything that this analysis tells you, which I never saw it, because I did not want it to see an analysis. It's in contradiction with what I'm tasting. So I called my guy in Rome. I said, what are you doing? We have a project. We got to take it till the end. Why are you giving up halfway? He says, but I saw the analysis. I said, yeah, but you haven't tasted. And so what we learn, and we learned this with critics, with both Parker or Suckling, but even the New York Times, Eric Asimov, when he came, that the wine, Sina Soufre, which has no chemicals whatsoever, from a scientific point of view, when you read the analysis, it's the wine with the least amount of acidity. But when you drink it, you think that this is a wine with the highest amount of acidity. So my speculation is that there is some scientific data that science is unable to read now, that I call energy, but I'm not telling you that I'm right. As a matter of fact, none of the things that I'm telling you are the truth. These are just my experiences there, you know, because if you go somewhere else, maybe these are different experiences. And so then my best friend that came, that sadly passed away, who's Jean-Marc and my distributor in the US, says, what is this wine? I love it, I'll buy it all. And he says, you have to do all your wines this way. Of course, you know, it's like, you're a merchant, I'm a winemaker. If it goes bad, are you gonna give me a check? So let's go there gradually. But that is the haute couture of Chacra. So basically that allows us to understand what's possible outside of our realm of understanding, you know? And that has influenced all of our wines, because since then, we stopped putting sulfur in all the wines. We stopped putting anything in all the wines during fermentation. Then the other wines will get some sulfur during élevage and prior to bottling. But so I also find that wine has far more things inside. You know, sulfur kills stuff, right? The good, but also the bad. I mean, the bad and also the good. That wine has nothing in it. So you're really able to get so much more stuff. Today, the wine that you're drinking, so what I call the commercial Sina Soufre, because I do 2 batches. I do 600 bottles just for me from the 32 vineyards. And then I do that wine that I sell to the public, and then is made today with a 55 vineyard. So the interesting thing for me, without judging, just as a curiosity, it's to take a 55 and to take the Sina Soufre and understand that the only thing that is different, it's in one, there is no science. So it's made by the intellect of a man without a reaction with an action from a scientific data. And the other one is a more of a conventional wine. Now, keep in mind that Sina Soufre, it's I think 35% ppm of total. So within the natural wine industry, Sina Soufre is considered to be a natural wine. Then I don't use this word natural because I've never harvested bottles. So there is nothing natural about wine. Wine is not a natural product.
Grapes are natural.
Unripe grapes are natural. Because if you let the plant go, I have a vine in my garden that is, the branch is 35 meters long. So those grapes never ripen. You know, you go in front of the plant, you look at it, it's like giving a haircut. You chop, 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 you bend, and you tie. And so the production stays close to the plant, the saps gets there faster, X amount of leaves, and you get ripened. Otherwise, it doesn't ripe. Yeah. Does it make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's really amazing, I think, to speak about. Everyone are so afraid, you know, sometimes about the natural wine and how it will make the trip and the tour. And this wine made a very big trip. It went from us.
It was bottled in Israel 2 days ago.
From Patagonia to Israel, bottled in Israel, traveled to France, and is here now with us. And I tell you, I want to put all the other ones in the side because they need 5 to 7 years of aging to get to the point. We opened the bottle. When we opened it, it was like, whoa, this is a very tough boy. And then when we let it breathe, after 15, 20 minutes, drink it like water. And it's amazing to see that it guarded itself with the natural way you do that. Huh?
I did the same way, almost the same way at my home. I opened the bottle and I drank it through 3 days. And after 3 days, the wine really blossomed. It was an explosion in the glass. And
but think about it for a second, because we always get into science and in our own brain, we forget about just common sense. Imagine I take you, I stick you in a bottle. So you're super tight.
Mm-hmm.
Your body has to adjust to the shape of a bottle. Then they stick a cork on top of you. And you can barely breathe, right?
Yeah.
Then they ship you from one country to the other. It's cold, it's hot, up, down, truck, this and that. Then they open the bottle and they're like, okay, now run.
no, you can't run.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
So unless there is a strong chemical component that stabilize everything within a certain format, you're not going to be able to get that point. So this is what the lack of chemistry does. The wine will need a little bit of oxygen and a little bit more time to come back into its own.
The wine is exactly you and your injury. You've been on the wheelchair and easy, 1, 2, 3, it goes, and here you stand up and make wine. It's not only that the idea, it is the reflection of your recuperation.
Yeah, but I think there's a parallel between that and human lives. You know, we all need the same thing. We need light, we need oxygen, we need water to survive. So there's a lot of parallels between the way we are and the way nature functions, you know, not just the wine. But so the idea,
we have one reaction in Hebrew saying that your words, your things you say, it's fascinating, and he suggests us that we keep this record and analyze it in professional courses, for example, you know, to see how a person is opening up so beautifully in a personal way to a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
But we're not strangers. We're stuck on the same globe. We think we're strangers, but we're not.
Already an hour, so
I must
like
tell you just one thing. Everyone here should know that we always record all of our tastings, and all of our tasting are going upload after to the website. And we know that, you know, we do it all the time. So we are not thinking about how many great things, how many information, how many people we've met in a very different way. You are not giving us wine in the winery in freezing or not. So,
but you know, just to touch, I don't know how much time we have left. It's not for me personally. You know, I'm super privileged. I don't know what I've done to deserve all this luck in my life, but. For me, it's about trying to create a sustainable model that is got a long life ahead of it, in which you are a participant to your community. You don't just do monovarietal, because that's the worst thing for nature. You know, we talk a lot about wine, but we don't talk about the repercussion of just doing one culture. So for me, I don't own a winery. I own a farm. So we have all sorts of farm cultivations, as well as animals, goats, chicken. We try to live in symbiosis with our surrounding. And we're trying to show people that you can be a farmer, be responsible with the environment, not using chemicals, be a participant in the community without using chemicals, and still be viable and profitable. Because I think that, you know, sadly, even when I go back to my home in Bolgheri and I go jogging on the Bolgherese, which is a little street that crosses our estate in two, can't begin to tell you how many equipment I see spraying there. And then you walk into the fields and there's not a worm, and there's not a butterfly, and there is not, you know, and so it's about trying to provide alternative that people will understand that they're accessible, they can apply to their own farming, and also hopefully to make the job of a farmer a little bit more illustrious and a little bit more chic, because in certain countries, farmers, like in France, paysan is a word that they use to insult people.
Yeah.
Contadino is the word that they use to insult people, while the farmer is the most intellectual being that is on earth. And maybe the wisest one, and the one who's more beaten up, and the one that is often very humble, because when you're thinking you're on top of the world and you're about to harvest your most beautiful grapes, hail comes and destroys everything and you have nothing. So I think that hopefully this will inspire other people to do something similar, so we can minimize the impact on chemistry, on chemicals that we inject in our food. And that way we can, you know, that Rudolf Steiner said that the demise of the American empire would be starting with food.
And you know, what is interesting about what you say is as well, I think in wine, we have more and more the world recognition about doing everything you said in the wine business, because naturally you spoke about when many winemakers, or even we speak now, I don't know, Leroy, Bizot, many, you know, people that really do that for the land, and really you have such a world recognition in terms also of price people pay for that, that it should be show the follow of so many new ones. Because you speak about Auvergnat, if we speak 5 or 7 years ago, we cannot see any newcomers coming to be like Auvergnat or in this style. And today we don't have enough in our fingers to do that. And I think everything, it's, you know, it's kind of a revolution taking time. Of course, there are many people take advantage on it and doing some crazy things that in the end, we drink wine, we want that it will be nice. Huh? It's not that if you do it natural, it's should be something.
But this is a misconception, I think, sadly, because people that are classical wine drinkers, often their first trial of a so-called natural wine was a negative experience.
Yeah.
And sadly, it stained them, it marked them. And so, but it marked, it's an interesting phenomenon, you know, because people like, I don't want to insult anyone, but there's a region in France where a lot of wine is really with bread, and they constantly call it terroir. So there's a very strong tolerance with fine, expensive wine with bread. But God forbid a natural wine has a little bit of bread, immediately it becomes the black sheep. I personally don't like bread either. But what I'm trying to address is that when such a novel flavor comes, or a new way, which is not new at all, because this is actually the most traditional way to make wine, no? Because all those science was not available during the Romans, the Etruscan, and so on and so forth. But I think that there will be a natural selection. You know, if you remember the internet boom, there is 1,500 companies and maybe 5 survived, the one that people like the most. So I think that the more people will try natural wines, or wines that are organic and biodynamic, that are appealing to them, that they're clean, that they're fresh, that there is a clean fruit, you know, and they're not over extracted, that convey happiness, you know. And I think the more there will be people that will be interested in it. But like you said, it takes time. I think the most important is to make great wine.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you're alone at home and you want to escape whatever you want to escape in that goes on in your head, you want to have a glass of wine that will make you happy. If you have to justify a million things that you feel in your palate with your brain, it already becomes an intellectual thing. So, you know, if you drink DRC, Latache, blind, it makes you happy. Then maybe when you know the price and your wife bought it with your money, that makes you not so happy, or vice versa. But, you know, I feel that's, so wine has to be good. And I think we're going to get there.
So we get one, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like before, you know, when we had the revolution of, okay, no natural wine and a sulfur addition and everything of that. In the end, you had the, again, you know, the natural world goes and you have those that are great and the rest.
Yeah.
In the natural wine business, you have too much mix between, you know, they are still not, there is no level of quality, cleanliness, and different. Like you spoke about one region with the bread. We can speak about the regions that they do natural wine in a way that they are so extravagant and oxidized that everyone say, we like it because it's that. So it's in time, you know, it's a process of time to really balance all that. It's like we are inside a kind of revolution goes, and it will, you know, put the map. It's drawing their map as well. So
yeah,
that. And we have here a question. I will. I think I can answer, but I will tell you if I'm wrong. In your view, what is the difference between Sin Azufre from the plot 55? It's the same. And Sin Azufre from plot 32. Well, you will see the difference now between the 32 and 55. And will you battle 32 Sin Azufre for the public one day? Not answer.
So first question, the difference is determined by the soil composition. At Chacra, we have 4 elements, which are the same, but their percentages changes.
And we can pour, just a second, we can pour the 55.
Yeah.
Everyone.
By the way, if you can, are they same vintage, those 2 wines?
No, it's 2020 for the 55 and 2019 for the 32.
For the 32, yes, for Sin Azufre.
No, but Sin Azufre and 55 are the same vintage.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yes, so people, what they have, I have finished my Sin Azufre, but
if you have a little bit of wine and if you're interested in looking through the window of differences, I would recommend you take each of you 2 glasses, you pour in one 55 and in the other one Sin Azufre. If it's too late, we can.
I'm coming, it's not too late. I think people have their glasses. I'm going to bring one more glass because I really have another small sip and would like to see that. Asaf, stay here, and I'm going to bring down another 2 glasses that we can see.
And so basically, make sure that it's the same glass and make sure that you pour the same amount. And if it's possible, pour little, because when you pour little, the oxygenation occurs faster. So you're getting a glimpse that is a little bit more complete. When you have these 2 wines in front of you, start by thinking that this is the same grape, grown in the same vineyard, fermented by the same people, with the same indigenous yeast, in the same container material. And there is no difference whatsoever. However, one is made by man without chemicals and without science. The other one is made by man with the help of science. And so when you take these 2 together, it's interesting because you get to understand what are the repercussion, the modification, or whatever adjective we want to use that will distinguish one wine to the other. And think that it's just sulfur, because, you know, we don't use added tannins in any of our wines. We don't use enzymes in any of our wines. So really, it's sulfur what changes the equation here. And so one, which is 55, in my view, it's a more classical expression of the Pinot that we're probably all used to. Okay, so one is linear and everything is in line, almost like a cypress tree. It's a straight line ahead of you. It's very delicate, it's floral, low alcohol, but it's like a sword, you know, it's like that. The other one, it's not like a cypress tree, it's like an oak tree. So there is many more ramification in your palate, and it fires in all directions. Why? Because with sulfur, you've killed half of the population. This is very simple. It's not that hard to comprehend. So let's not even think which one is best, because that's not the idea of the exercise. But I just want the public to understand how a wine without sulfur would taste with sulfur, and how a wine with sulfur would taste without sulfur, so that everyone can come to their own conclusions without judgment. And I think this is what's interesting. Second part to your question, we do start selling the 32 sans soufre probably next year. We've been very selfish right now. And even though that's the most expensive bottle of wine we have, I've been drinking it with my employees, because I think that in most wineries, like in my family winery at Sassicaia, the employees never get a bottle of Sassicaia, which angers me tremendously, since they are the superstars. Please don't ever say that in public, because it's trouble. And so for me, wine is sharing, and I want everyone to have access. So anytime it's Christmas or somebody has a birthday or something, I give them a bottle of Sans Soufre 32, because I feel
if we come, we get also, if we come to visit in Chacra.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
We're on the way.
We only make between 600 to 900 bottles a year. It's typically 3 barrels. And sometime one of the 3 barrels might not make it into the final blend. There is something else I want to tell you guys, because I don't want things to be coming so peachy. Okay, I forgot about this. Please know that Chacra Sina Soufre, the one that you're drinking, 9 times out of 10, 30% of that production, I remove it, I don't use it, and I put it in Barda, because it might catch a strong volatility or something else. Again, we are naked. Sulfur is like a magnetic field that protects you. Once you don't have sulfur, you're naked. And so deviations are always around the corner. Deviation of the kind that we don't like. Because in nature, there's no good and bad. A dog doesn't look at another dog and says, you're ugly, and I'm not gonna want to hang out with you. So this is us who we judge. What I'm trying to tell you, that to make these wines, it requires a lot of discipline. And you can never, we never ever made a blend based on a financial projection. That's the beginning of the end. We make a blend based on the best wine that we can make of that label. And that means that when we blend this, and this year, 15% of Sina Soufre did not make the final blend because the volatility was too high. We put it in Barda, a little bit of volatility spikes up the blend, makes it, it's great. I hate red, but I love volatility a little bit. No? So you need to have integrity, and you need to restrain the constant temptation that we have to make money, because I think we all have it. And you need to have discipline in order to make natural wines, because most of the time, when you're doing batches, because that's not a small batch, that's a 15,000 bottles wine. It's not small.
Wow.
Yes. And it's super hard to make such a large production like that. Really, 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 really hard. I had to invest so much money because I did an underground barrel room. So all of a sudden, there's no more air conditioning. There's no more humidifying machine. And I had to dig very deep. So we had to retool everything to provide even more natural environment for this wine to age. So we have a Sina Soufre division, and now we're building a winery for the Sina Soufre division. So Chacra, we treat it a little bit like a Formula One team. We do research and development constantly. This is what fires me up. This is why Jean-Marc is like this. Because you arrive in Argentina, you don't have the weight of history and your family domain heritage that you carry around that is not even yours. It's your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your father. Maybe you want to do something different, but you can't. Or maybe you're not, whatever, you don't want, or what might. Yeah. Here you arrive and you have great genetic material and a blank canvas. And so for us that are winemakers from Europe with a tradition in the wine business, it's the most magical thing we have. Chacra reinvests 100% of his benefits, of his profits every year. So it's a little bit of a different way to look at things. Yeah. Sorry, I deviated.
No, but it's amazing, first of all, to see the difference between, the more how can I
For
explain
me,
that?
it's more preserved. It's a little bit more shy at the moment, and it's a little
The
bit more
Cinquante
the
Cinque.
Cinquante Cinque,
Yeah.
and might be the sulfur just a little bit more closing the wine and give it like the more floral aspect and the small red fruits and the liveliness. And in the Cinna Soufre, I find the depth. I find the very deep fruit, and might be a little bit more earthiness than the floralness of the Cinquante Ichenko.
I can say that I understand why they invented sulfur to preserve wine.
I'm not against sulfur.
That is
sulfur.
No, this is not against. This is nothing against. This is just, I say, you know what? It's very interesting because the Cinna Soufre will age for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the Cinquante Cinque, what happened with the touch of the sulfur inside for me is that it will let it age much more slowly and longer. And it's like a little bit putting your wine in a decanter and let it breathe in the bottle.
Yeah.
And I love both of them. And you don't say that Cinquante Cinque, there is not amount of sulfur here like it's blocking. It's just
but just
addition
the tiny bit
to make it
makes
sure,
the difference.
you know that. And it's much, I can say that there is, I love the fragrance you have in the Cinna Soufre. I love the palate and everything inside. The Cinquante Cinque is a bit more restrained, and you still guard a little bit more coolness inside it.
Yeah.
Maybe one is more of a carnal love affair and the other one is an intellectual love affair.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, when you taste, because we are so
we are lucky we don't need to choose.
Yeah. I had so many jokes to add to that, but maybe when I see you. Also, Asaf, I think that we're tasting with something in mind already. We're never tasting from a position of nothingness.
Yeah.
So our tasting that we have conducted until now conditions us. You understand?
Yeah.
And so I think that in 20, 30 years, the dialogue will be different. We're so used to wines when Burgundy age, that is like this, like this. So if something was of the same grape, but made in a different way, I remember when I came to America in 1988, I went to college in California. Americans were drinking burnt coffee in copious amounts, and it was disgusting. But they love burnt coffee. It took them 30 years to appreciate espresso. Now they don't want to drink burnt coffee anymore. So sometimes we like things just because there is a background of relatedness of the emotional kind, that prevents us from being completely open and take other things in consideration. I'm not telling you that I'm right, but it's a little bit of an analysis, because the more I start drinking those wines, then I have a hard time going back to the others.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And first of all, that's why for us, I think 95% of the wine we drink, not we taste, because when we taste, we go to the winery, we know what we taste, but 95% of the wine we drink blind. Even if we were to Epicure a few days ago in Paris, and we taste all the bottles, even, each one is choosing, and it's blind, completely blind. That's letting you also, to do that. And sometimes you see a bottle, you say, wow, I thought this one, and when you go to a total natural bottle, my partner, his partner used to tell him, oh, Vernois, oh, Jura, oh, natural, what is that? No, we don't like it, it's nothing. And then one day they sit in La Meloise and he give them Vigne de Mon Père 2003 on blind. And they go, Bâtard Montrachet, Leflèvre, Big Vintage, Ramonet, Montrachet, that. He said, yes, you are correct. Open the bottle. From that day, they love Jura, they drink Ganva, they drink Auvernois, they drink many, but it also should be, the right bottle. And for me...
So you're the one who's been driving the prices up of Ganva.
No, it's the Russian oligarch. Came there. And I think the main difference here is more the palate than the aroma. The aroma for me, you have much more notes. The palate, you can feel, after you drink the Sinazufre, you can feel the little burn you get in your palate. The small burn you get from the touch of the sulfur, the different one, when it's exactly the same one doing different, the palate is still very different, yet the minerality and the finish is becoming very same after, because the saliva after that is coming on the same way almost into your palate with a bit more coolness for me in the 55. And it's very nice and amazing experience to see that. I would like to see that same on the same two in 10 years and see what happened in 10 years.
When you come, I can make you try the first vintage of Sinasufre, which was 14. You know, I had 4 English master of wine came into the winery, and the first tasting I gave them, it was like 6 vintages of Sinasufre. And the wine holds very well.
I'm sure, because we traveled it very well. We try to abuse it, and it's still really great. Huh?
I'm interested to know from all of you guys today, if you have any questions, but also if you have any comments. When you was that in terms of 55 and Sinasufre, you know, like.
So you have a guy said, thanks, Piero. I really enjoyed Sinasufre. I did note the difference from 55 in favor of Sinasufre. So I'm very curious to try 32 without sulfur.
Tell him we'll wait for this person in February, and we can drink as much as he wants when he comes to the winery.
Yeah, I think he's still in the army.
Oh, well.
Isn't it Itai, which is? It's coming.
I don't see the full name, but
maybe we can ship him a bottle if he's at the army. Poor guy.
Poor guy.
And
I can FedEx you a bottle for him.
Itai Alkin? I don't know. Okay, we'll
double check that and
double check. But it's really unbelievable to see that, and I think we should have the 32 to and see a little bit another different, because we should have the 55 in the glass and see the difference between 20 and 19 as well.
Oh, yeah.
So somebody asked me before, what was the difference, I think, between 32 and 55, or between, you know, like I said to you, so imagine it's a valley, and you know, there is stains of soil composition, right? Pedro Parra called it the vomit from the Andes, in a sense, because it comes in like in splashes. We have clay, sand, lime, and river stones, pebbles, grave, as they call them in French. So these 4 elements are constant. What changes is their percentages and where they are in terms of their depth. We called Pedro Parra, which is one of the top geologists on the planet for wine. And we quickly discovered that what we felt was true was not true at all. And this is the same for everywhere he goes. So we mapped all of our vineyard. We did the electric conductivity of the soil that he does through sending waves down, and then he sees how fast they travel based on the mineral component. And so for Barda is a lot sandier. For 55 is a good balance between sand and clay. And 32, there is a little bit more clay. 32 is a vineyard planted in 1932, is approximately 2 hectares. And when I say there is a vineyard planted in 1932, is a little bit disingenuous what I'm telling you, because as any members of the human species that were born in 1932, by the time you arrive in 2020, some are dead. Some of them got killed by a tractor. Some of them died of disease. Some of them were too weak. So this vineyard, the mom was planted in 1932, but from 1932 to 2020, there's been some addition. never a complete replanting, because farmers are poor. So when plant dies, they replace the plant. It's not that they rip out the whole vineyard. So this is what Chacra 32 is. 32 means 32, meaning the wine comes from a vineyard planted in 1932, just like 55 means 55, that vineyard was planted in 1955. 18 for us was a superstar vintage. I find that wine to be, it's almost like the perfect storm what happened for us. We had a healthy production of grapes. The flowering was very even. We had a ripening season that we never were the recipient of super warm weather. At least the warm wind at night that has a tendency to make our pH disappear very quickly. And I don't know, you tell me, how do you like the wine? It typically benefits from being open for at least an hour. Going back to what you were saying before.
I think it's unbelievable, huge bottle of wine. First of all, before it's even a really, really great bottle of Pinot Noir, it's an amazing, amazing wine. Really, it's and what I didn't speak with you about yet was, for me, the main difference was in my first tasting Chacra, when you sent us the bottle and we did a tasting, was the way, the place you get the tannins. Instead of having the tannins on the front of the palate mostly and on the back, in the first time of my life, I felt a lot of dryness, a lot of tannins going on the upper part up to the tongue, inside the mouth, up to the tongue, feeling all this part in tannins, in dryness. And it was really, really, really special to feel that, because it's not like, you know, you feel the wood coming on the tongue. It's like on the middle of the tongue going up, and almost like you have a connection between the tongue and the upper part of the palate and not the down part. And of course, with many, all this kind of saliva going inside. And both of these things were for me the special character, changing from Pinot Noir I'm used to have in Burgundy to the Pinot Noir you have in Patagonia, because in terms of the freshness, the energy, the lightness, the everything, you have very similar. And then only that, inside the palate, it's a very different texture.
You know that for the since my accident, one of the things that I changed was the élevage of the 32. I was always looking at winemaking from a European point of view, in which typically your malolactic occurs once you've gone into élevage. I don't want to be too technical for people, but basically you're making the wine is finished, the wine is dry, you transfer the wine into a barrel or whatever container you want to use to age, and then you have a secondary fermentation called the malolactic that kicks in, which has a tendency to smooth the tannins down and to make them, you know, softer. Going back to what Jean-Marc was saying, animals, the lack of chemical components in this valley, or the minimum amount of chemical components, gives us a very aggressive, very strong malolactic. So often, by the time the vat is dry, malo starts immediately. It's not rare at all that we go in élevage with malo already done.
Wow.
So typically in Burgundy, they wait for the malo, then they rack, meaning they remove the wine from the barrels. They clean the barrels because there is a lot of dead yeast and so on and so forth at the bottom of the barrel. And then they put the wine back in, right? They take it out in a very slow way with a gun that doesn't touch the bottom, so they don't absorb all of, you know, the borra, what we call the lees, and so the wine gets a little bit of air. And in Burgundy, they have a tendency to be able to, the wine's a little bit more tannic. There's a little bit less light and different soil composition. So when I start thinking after my accident that my brain started going in different places, I decided to shorten my élevage. And by doing so, I felt that the wines are far more energetic today than they used to be.
Yeah.
And also our barrel, details, no, but we clean our barrels in a completely different way. We have the state-of-the-art equipment. And so the barrels right now are very clean inside because we want to have wines that are floral and clean, and so that has helped. And that's why when I taste colors sometime and there are no dark colors. There is no dark brown when I taste. They usually come from old wood often, and I get that a lot of this old brown in Europe when I taste.
Amazing that you have so much freshness and cleanness in your dirtiness.
But that's the trick. I don't know if that's the trick.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. That's what we're trying to accomplish. We're walking a tightrope in which I want density, concentration, energy, transparency, without heaviness, and without an over amount of tannins. So
You try to make a lot of Muzzini. All the complexity on a very lean thing. All the power the world have with zero mass. No.
You're not allowed to sell me out in public like this, by the way. I did a tasting with Jean-Marc and I took my boys with it. And we did back-to-back super quickly, Roumier and Fourier. 2 hours or 3 hours with Roumier and then 3 hours with Fourier, in that order.
Oof. Nice.
I would like to be in the middle, slightly closer to Roumier.
You need to taste Mio. If you haven't tasted, I think
I haven't tasted.
It's the one doing Burgundy in between Fourier and Roumier exactly.
And it's always
it's very difficult because what we want the wine to be ready immediately. We want you to have the happy experience from the get-go. So that's the tightrope we're trying to walk, that you're getting the pleasure of a glugel wine, but with the intellectuality of a very good wine. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It's like a 34-year-old human. I'm saying this for boys and girls, 25 is very pretty, but not a lot of brain. Then 50 is still pretty, but a little slow. 34 or 33, which was the age of Jesus Christ, you have the body and your intellectuality has improved. And you're still pleasant because you're still happy. So, I mean, that's how I see things, So we want to be there. We want you to experience a good pleasure, freshness, cleanness, but also that intellectual aspect that tickles your soul. It's difficult to use words for me sometimes. I apologize because I use a broader vocabulary than the industry uses, but hopefully to try to convey something that resonates with you.
So, first of all, you are really one of a kind. You are really amazing. I must tell you, you are one of the most inspired tasting I ever met. I don't believe I sit in a hotel in Paris, ran here, there, having, that life is amazing thing, basically. You never know where you found any inspiration. You should be always ready for that. But we have few questions and a phrase. Few words about the drinking window suggested for the last two reds, and if the Pinot Noir, your Pinot Noir, is more approachable than the Pinot Noir of Burgundy in general, which is a little different, between one winery and a whole region. But yeah,
right. I'll answer to the first question first because I think it's the easiest. Thank you for the question. I will decline an answer because I think it would be very presumptuous and arrogant for me to tell you my thoughts in terms of that. What I would invite you to is to listen to you guys to provide an answer to these questions, because you taste a lot of Burgundy, you taste our wines. So you're more of an independent party, maybe with a more balanced point of view. I think it's not my place to answer that. I forgot the first question, sorry.
The question is about the drinking window of the last two reds.
So I get these questions all the time, and I feel that it's difficult to give you an intelligent, informed answer. Typically, my great-grandfather was saying that to know someone, you need to eat 1 kilo of salt with them. After you've done eating 1 kilo of salt with them, you know that person. When I get this question, it's very hard to give you an intelligent answer because I don't know you guys. I don't know what you drink. I don't know where your palate is at. I don't know if you like primary, secondary, or tertiary evolution. I don't know what you're drinking at home and what are your preferences. So I can tell you my own point of view, but it might not resonate with you if you like other things. And you're not wrong, and neither am I. We all have individual truth. They're all valid. So the first question is, I don't know. And that's the more real answer. I've recently tried my first vintage, which was 2003 and 2004 and 2005. I love the wines, but they're radically different from what we make today. The wines are dusty. The wines are very, I don't want to say simple, but they're more rustic. They don't have the finesse and the transparency and the florality that the wines today. Why? A, because we were making them slightly differently, but B, because now we benefit from 20 years of soil work. So we have a soil that is fluffy and that is packed with biodiversity. When I got there, some soils were gray and dead. So a soil that is gray, in which there is a lot of clay, becomes like cement. The root system can't really move around. So it's like if you go in a supermarket and you can only shop from one aisle. And your diet consists in that one aisle. So that's what you have when your soil is compacted. The root system is like this and it can't go anywhere. So you're getting compacted everything. After 20 years, it's super fluffy. The root system can go very broadly. And all of a sudden, they don't shop from one aisle. They shop from 50 aisles. So they have a much more complex and complete diet. So I find that the wine today feel less compact. They're freer and they're more transparent. They have more energy. And all of this matches my visual images. So very often you see it something and you can tell what it tastes like in my vineyard, you know what I mean? So then there is the middle point, which was, let's say, from 2009 to 2013. And those wines were less rustic, but I felt we were using a little too much wood. And today's, I feel that the wines are delicious when they're young. And then as they're aging, I don't have any idea because we don't have a domain that is 120 years old. The domain is 20 years old. So I hope that they will age well. My suggestion is always drink a wine when it conveys pleasure to you. If you have a lot of money, buy 1 or 2 cases and drink 1 or 2 bottles at a time. And then take a little note and stick the note back into the box.
You convinced today a guy that seen as wine without sulfur was better than the one with, who is a big fan for Bordeaux more than Burgundy.
Yeah.
Thank you, but he convinced himself.
Yeah.
He allowed his palate to speak for himself. And he let go of preconceived notions. So we should congratulate him. He just taught us something that if you let go, you can learn so much more. Thank you.
You are
remarkable, Piero.
I don't
really,
know what more
really
to say, but it's such an amazing tasting. I mean, we had these 2 weeks having you and Jean-Marc and having Guillaume before, and you know, it's just spectacular to have all of you like that in Zoom and chat, you know, freely without being in the winery. We are in a comfort zone, speak each one from his. The client are in the salon, so they are in their comfort zone as well. And they can show themselves or unshow or everything. And it's the most, I think, you know, today it's a great proof for me being here in Paris doing that, how we really can pass to so many places in what is beautiful in technology, also in wine, but also in this kind of technology that we can, you know, sit, battle, send it almost everywhere, and having such a great conversation with you, which is on the other side of the Atlantic, and to get to taste Chacra. I don't know how many here will have this opportunity. I'm coming for sure as fast as I can. I promised Jamal Khan that I come to visit him in Chacra.
When he will be there.
So I wanted to, number one, thank you for your compliments. It's very difficult for me to receive a compliment. It makes me cringe and sometimes it makes me cry. So I managed to keep a straight face. Thank you very much. I want to be brutally honest.
Yeah.
My name is on the deed, but I'm not the owner. In my job, it's not an individual. In this case, it's 36 people that wake up very early in the morning, that due to an inflation at 50% and an incompetent government, their salary barely gets them to the end of the month. They have to very mediocre education. The access to food is limited to flour for the most kind, so they gain weight because they have a bad diet. Sometimes they wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning for a month because we have frost. So they all need to come to the winery, turn on the mid system that we have, and be wet all night and cold because it's freezing before they get to go home in time to take their kids to school. So what you're tasting today, I am the guy with the privilege that got to travel around, observe, absorb, and try to replicate. But without those guys and without nature, there is no wine, ever. And we never talk enough about them, and we should, because while I'm the privileged white Italian man, they are stuck in a very difficult situation. They barely make it to the end of the month. That's why we have a 2 acres vegetable garden and we feed everyone organic veggies. I'm trying to make Argentinian make vegetarian. Imagine what kind of a war is that, right? Because they're like, I sent 5 guys to do a biodynamic course in the north. They call me at 2 o'clock in the morning crying, says, we've been dreaming about cows at night. They make us hold hands and sing to the moon. So these are people that came a long way with an open mind. And it's important for me to convey this to you. So thank you. I'll take all your thanks, but they are the one. They are the one that put 99% of the sacrifice in the bottle comes from them. So hopefully we'll get to shine the light on them more and more and more, because there is a lot of sacrifices. It's very difficult, and they come to work in a good mood, and they're always trying their best. So thank you again.
And so
you also, and for your team,
cheers, and cheers for them as well, for their work. And we'll come, send us the photos. We'll publish a little bit, do some nice thing also for them.
I will, truth to be told, I'm in my house in New York. I'm currently in my house in New York, and I'm going down in 2 days. So I'm taking this Zoom from my house in New York, and I'll be there in 2 days. So I'll send you loads of pictures. All the pictures that you see me posting is because my guys in the vineyards are sending them to me.
So it was, you have the thank also from everyone here. It was an amazing tasting. You have great wines. Good luck to all your team as well. And you have so many here, people saying so much. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
We love Israel, and please know, and I mean what I say, you all have an open invitation to come as my guests to Chacra. We provide a beautiful guest house, great food, unlimited supply of wine while you're there. That means you have to drink it. We can host up to 4 to 6 people at the same time. if it's off season. On season, a little bit less because we have, 5 people that come from all over the world to help us make wine. But please know that my home is your home. We share the same passion. And so I meant what I say. If you want to come, shoot us an email. Those guys will give you my personal email address. And we'll be honored and delighted to receive you. And if you find any scientific correlation to my thoughts, please let me know because I'm very interested in knowing this too.
Thank you very much, Piero. It was an amazing moment. Really, 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 really. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
גם תודה ללקוחות שישבו פה 2 שלמות ובאמת הקשיבו
משהו שהוא
דברים
מעולם אחר.
מדהימים. אנחנו באמת בחודש מאוד מאוד מעורר השראה עם גיון דנג'רוויל לפני שבוע, והיום עם פיירו אינצ'יסה מבודגה צ'קרה וז'אן מרק קרולו.
נתראה בקרוב בהבא, באירועים, בדברים. תודה רבה לכם. אנחנו נתראה בקרוב.
חג שמח.
חג שמח, חנוכה שמח, שרק נדליק עוד אורות תמיד, רק שאור יבוא אלינו.
תודה רבה.